If you've been watching me on social media for a while, you probably already know that I do not watch Fox News. And people on the left particularly are usually very surprised when they hear that because they think that everyone on the right side of the aisle religiously consumes copious amounts of Fox News. Nothing could be further from the truth. But I made an exception the other night when Kamala Harris dared to do an interview with Bret Baier on Fox News. And I'm not sure if those of you out there watched the whole thing or saw a few clips here or there, but let me tell you this. That was one of the worst, most disastrous things Kamala Harris has done for her campaign since the last verbal faux pas that she got embroiled in barely a few days before that. Let me tell you, this was not a good showing for her. And Kamala Harris, for her part, or to her credit, she's been doing a lot of media tours. Of course, that's why she couldn't be bothered to really show up to offer the timely aid that individuals in places like Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee needed after the hurricanes, because she was busy doing a podcast for Call Her Daddy. Different topic for a different day. But now she chose to march over to Fox News and give an interview to Bret Baier. As I watched this interview, I couldn't help but think, why is she doing this? Why did her team allow her to do this in the first place? Because when you listen to a leftist for long enough, what you'll notice is they do not engage in debate, classical debate anymore. They very rarely even present their own policy positions anymore, because to them, all they have to say is Donald Trump. They've inculcated their side of the aisle to behave like a Pavlovian dog whenever they hear that phrase or that name, Donald Trump. And so often during the Fox News interview, which lasted for about a half hour, when she was pressed on issues that actually matter, to his credit, Bret Baier did a fantastic job, and I usually do not have very many kind things to say about him, but I digress. But he made a very cogent point. And that point was that 4 out of 5 Americans who have been polled recently have said that the country is on the wrong track. And of course, in response to that, when he asked Kamala Harris why she believed that to be the case, one of the first things out of her mouth was Donald Trump this, Donald Trump that. The mental acuity of the average leftist politician and voter at this point in 2024 seems to have left completely. They seem to be bereft of any critical thinking skills whatsoever, and all they can do is talk about Donald Trump. It's very similar to what they've done with other certain words or phrases. Phrases like Black Lives Matter, phrases like, stop Asian hate, phrases like racism needs to end, phrases like a new way forward, phrases like unburdened by what has been. Of course, some of these phrases are actually dog whistles to individuals who are politically aware and understand the hallmarks they have for Marxist or socialist leanings. But the fact of the matter is, we have gotten to a point in America where individuals now, they view politics, particularly on the left side of the aisle, as I'm just in the fan club. That's why there's a remarkable dichotomy, or not even dichotomy, but remarkable unilateralness when it comes to individuals who love these big entertainers like Billie Eilish and Taylor Swift, and those who love or purport to love Kamala Harris. They treat it like it's some sort of fan club. And when individuals are sitting around their kitchen tables or sitting on the couch after a long day of work, they're not sitting there saying, Donald Trump this, Donald Trump that. When they look at their children and they see their children suffering because they can't afford to get all the groceries that they need, they can't afford to buy the formula their kids need, are they sitting there saying, I can't believe I can't buy groceries now because of Donald Trump? They're not saying that. But the average leftist politician is so disconnected from reality that all they can say is Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. And then leftist voters will say, oh yeah, Donald Trump, I can't stand him. Failing to realize that Donald Trump is not the reason that the cost of living has had a meteoric rise over these past several years. Donald Trump is not the reason that you weren't able to get the hurricane aid you so desperately needed. Donald Trump is not the reason why we have literal gangs of criminals from outside this country taking over apartment complexes right now in San Antonio, Texas, my hometown. That is not Donald Trump's fault. Now, the reason that I titled this video, Is It Too Late?, is for 2 reasons. Number 1 is because the question has to be raised, is it too late to save some of these people who would espouse these talking points that are completely antithetical to reality? But the other question becomes, is it too late for us to wrest back control over the trajectory of this country? And the answer is going to depend on who you ask, but I would argue this. It is never too late as long as there are at least a handful of patriots in this country who are willing to step up and actually do the work that's required. Let me tell you this, the work itself, it's not the sexiest thing in the world. It's not like you're going to be flitting off to Mar-a-Lago every 5 minutes to take a picture with Trump. The hard work begins at the state and local level. And if you've been watching me for a long time, you know I've been hammering this point home for 4 years. What you do in your local elections matters just as much, if not more, in the presidential elections. It's not enough to simply say, I'm going to show up and vote on election day every 4 years, and I'm going to complain online the rest of the time. What else are you planning on doing? Now, there's other individuals out there who do not believe in the concept of early voting. To them, I would say the following. If you wait until the last minute to go vote, you run the risk of chicanery taking place, deliberate chicanery taking place, that could effectively strip you of your chance to be a part of this process. Some people don't believe in voting at all at this point because they've been so browbeaten by the left. And honestly, to a degree, I understand them. But I'll also say this. If you choose to throw your hands up now, if you choose to say, what's the point in voting whatsoever, then those who would engage in some sort of subterfuge, it's an irrefragable fact that they are going to attempt that again. But if you don't even show up, you essentially forfeit the game, if you will, to use that metaphorical turn of phrase, before it even begins. You cannot afford to run that risk. If you do it for no one else, do it for the next generation. There are positive headwinds that we're seeing across the country. Those headwinds indicate that the vast majority of young men in Gen Z, they are swinging incredibly to the right side of the aisle, as well they should. And I would argue part of that has to do with the inherently rebellious spirit of the young people, the young generation. Whenever something becomes mainstream, there is always a counterculture that emerges. Because if you are of that age group, then you're more susceptible to look at the other side as being this is how I rebel. And that is where the left truly has overplayed their hand over these past several years, and even I would argue the last 2 decades or so, is that they've